Next panelist is Mr. Mark Clark. He's representing, Generations for Peace. I'd like to hear from him about, their activity. The activity, I think, much involved with the global citizenship concept, in a broad context. I'm very excited to hear your presentation. Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor to be here, and I'd like to begin by thanking His Excellency Ambassador Woo Jun for the very kind invitation, and Ambassador Han Jung-hee for moderating this panel. I represent Generations for Peace, which is an unusual organization. We're a Jordanian international NGO. So we're based in Amman, but we're supporting peace building and conflict transformation activities at grassroots level in communities around the world. I'm very delighted that the Ambassador of Jordan to the UN was here this morning, and we've already heard about the UNESCO Global Citizenship Education MENA region workshop on youth advocacy for peace building last year, which was hosted at Generations for Peace headquarters in Amman. I think at the heart of all Generations for Peace programs around the world, we're really promoting 4 values: youth leadership, community empowerment, active tolerance, and responsible citizenship. And I think if we translate those values into the vocabulary of the UN system, of course, with regard to the global goals, we're focused on goal number 4, education, number 5, gender equality, number 10, reduced inequalities more generally, and of course, goal number 16 around peace. We're also very invested in implementing the 2015 Amman Declaration on Youth, Peace and Security, and in providing concrete programmatic implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 2250 around youth-led participation and implementation of peace-building programs. I've been asked to provide some programmatic experience, therefore, with a focus on how global citizenship education links with prevention or countering violent extremism. So one starting point is UN Secretary General's Plan of Action to Prevent Violent Extremism, issued in January earlier this year. He highlighted the need for education that builds young people's resilience to violent extremist messaging and fosters a positive sense of identity and belonging, noted the importance of youth participation, as we've heard a number of times this morning already, and also articulated the different push and pull factors that youth may be navigating in their own communities. I think Generations for Peace's own understanding of the complexity, the contextual nature, and the ever-shifting aspect of competing push and pull factors is informed directly by our own programmatic experience in communities on the ground, on the one hand, and on the other hand, by our own research led by our Generations for Peace Institute. So our programmatic experience, not only in the Middle East and North Africa region, in Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, northern Iraq, Libya, Tunisia, Yemen, but also elsewhere, for example, in northern Nigeria, in the Chechen Republic, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. So diverse range of different contexts. And the research of our Generations for Peace Institute, most notably in partnership with the University of Oxford, is focused on the work of Professor Scott Atran and the Center for Resolution of Intractable Conflict and their work on violent extremism. Our programmatic experience is being informed by their devoted actor hypothesis, which looks at 2 related domains, which I think resonate also with the presentations this morning, especially Fernando's. And the 2 domains are sacred values, the idea that in any culture, people hold within their value system certain values which are held so strongly that they may rationally inform extreme action, even commitment to participate in violence. Violence against oneself, self-sacrifice to save another, also self-sacrifice in the form of suicide bombing, and also extreme violence against others, even to the extent of beheading somebody with a knife on YouTube. So sacred values is one domain. The other domain they call group fusion. And they've articulated a mechanism for quantifying the extent to which an individual is fused with a group identity, that sense of belonging once again. So I think global citizenship education, and certainly the work of Generations for Peace in practice, is about responding to those two domains. It's about promoting positive values and providing positive opportunities for group fusion, for giving youth opportunities to work together, to collaborate, and to demonstrate their leadership and responsibility, fostering greater social capital, resilience, and reducing vulnerability to violence, but also vulnerability to radicalization and recruitment to violent extremist organizations. In closing, I want to offer just a quick list of what might be considered lessons learned from our practical experiences in different conflict contexts. And the first lesson is vocabulary. We don't use the vocabulary of countering violent extremism on the ground. We focus on youth leadership, on social cohesion, on resilience. We intervene through strong existing structures in communities. So not only schools, but also youth centers, community centers, faith-based organizations, and local civil society organizations. We look at conflict analysis deeply, but it's context-driven, and it must include a sense of gendered analysis, different gendered experiences of violence and vulnerability. When it comes to training, training is important, but for us, it's only the beginning of a journey. We don't believe that training itself has any long-term social impact in communities unless it is the beginning of a journey of mentoring and support. So that is a key hallmark of our programs and our relationships with the youth leaders whom we train. And yes, of course, our training is, in a sense, education, and the work with youth around the world is about educating them about these values, but really it's education through action for us. And we have a range of activities, sport-based activities, arts-based activities, dialogue activities, but all of it is about experiential learning. And we also give youth leaders the chance to demonstrate their leadership and responsibility through designing and implementing and evaluating their own community initiatives. And that provides an opportunity then for a positive feedback loop as their own community see the contribution they can make, respond to it and appreciate it. That's incredibly motivating for youth who are often seen as the problem. They're often instrumentalized. Our programs are much more about tapping into that untapped potential of youth in communities. Of necessity, it means it's a long-term commitment by us, a long-term commitment to each individual we train, but also a long-term commitment to their communities, supporting them over successive cycles of programs year after year. But by taking that long-term commitment, by building trust and credibility over time, it also means we can move along two important axes. We can move up the vertical axis, up the food chain, up the axis of influence in order to, over time, reach key leaders in communities. And we can move along the horizontal axis of vulnerability to begin to really reach those who are more directly involved in violence, who may not be accessible at the beginning. And our last lesson learned is, if you can't measure it, you shouldn't be doing it. So we're very invested in robust systems for quantitative and qualitative measurement, baseline and endline surveys, but also participatory approaches to monitoring and evaluation, so that not just those directly involved in activities, but also the broader community and stakeholders in the community are involved in discussions around the impact, the results of programming, and decisions about future directions for their program, and it really is their program. I'm extremely happy to hear Fernando's presentation, and I was reflecting on the principles you presented, and I believe in our own programmatic experience way, we're matching many of the principles you've listed. Thank you very much for your attention.